Hi everybody, I'm Bart Reed, the Executive Director of the Transit Coalition. We have our monthly educational meetings here. Sometimes it's every 3 weeks, sometimes it's every 5 weeks. It just depends on the time of the year, the holidays coming up and whatnot. So welcome to the meeting tonight. Transit Coalition is a nonprofit that deals with transportation advocacy, land use planning, and goods movement, and educational programs. For example, earlier this week we had a meeting talking about what could be done to revitalize the lost $120 million project between the double track, the rails between Chatsworth and Van Nuys, and we worked on figuring out what future strategies there are. We also support projects like Bus Rapid Transit that's going to provide rapid transit service between Chatsworth, Cal State Northridge, North Hollywood, and then you'll be able to transfer to a bus to get to Eagle Rock and Pasadena, Glendale, and Burbank. So it doesn't matter whether it's bus transit or rail transit. We do advocate for it. We work on high-speed rail. We work on various projects of mobility and work on getting things accomplished. So we have a number of upcoming speakers, and I've spoken to some of you about the sponsorships, but I haven't mentioned sponsorships to you. Please give me a call. I have a business card. Upcoming meetings, we have Monica Bourne is coming in 2 weeks from tonight, and she's going to talk about Van Nuys Boulevard and light rail. I think it's through the environmental phase, or they're shepherding it through, and they're expecting to break ground on Van Nuys Boulevard in 2 years or so. Next after that, we've got Planes to Trains, which means it's the 96th Street Station and the automated people mover. We do attempt to, because a lot of the audience is in the professional careers, when the folks from some of the agencies want to send a PR speaker, I tell them, well, you can answer the technical questions, great, but generally we have our speakers with professional engineering backgrounds so they can explain. You've got really strong questions, and who's going to want to answer something that would be fine for a Chamber of Commerce meeting, but it's not good for a meeting here where people actually do want to learn a lot more. After we do Planes to Trains, we also have Stephanie Wiggins, the Metrolink CEO, coming up. We have the Valley to West LA project, which could possibly be a monorail project. It's something to be seen. In addition to that project, we've got a follow-up on the West Santa Ana branch in February or March. We also have Jeanette Owens, the regional rail person, coming in December. And so that pretty much covers the next 5 or 6 meetings. And I assume everybody's on the mailing list, but if you don't have my business card, I'm happy to give it to you and put you on the list. So tonight, several years ago, did you come out when Phil Washington came?
I wasn't here when Phil was here.
Oh, okay. Well, Metro has evolved over the years, and I believe Richard Clark, the head of engineering, came out here, and Rick Meade came and takes care of moving through many of the Measure M projects and moving the different rail projects. I think he worked on the 96th Street Station initially, and he's had a lot of experience, everything from my movie Boston.
Right, spent some time in Boston.
And he's actually spent a lot of time a lot of places, so he's got a really good institutional knowledge and knows properties across the United States. So tonight, I actually saw this a couple weeks ago, and it just was intriguing because I look at it as this is like a primer. Not everybody can know all the different projects that Metro's got going on. I think there's like 12 or 14 projects he's going to mention tonight. Some of our meetings we get into, we drill down with more details. Tonight it's somewhat of an overview of the different projects, but a lot of technical questions, and if you've got technical questions. And I should mention that there's plenty of food, so if anybody is still hungry, please grab another sandwich. Please grab some fruits and vegetables, because you should enjoy it while you're here. Anyways, so without further ado, Rick is going to come on. He's going to give a presentation, and there he is. Oh, you know what? We do introductions first. doing fine, and I forgot to do introductions. Okay. So you have a good picture of who's here. You probably know half of them or more. Yeah, some familiar faces. So welcome. So let's give a hand. So I'm Rick Meade. For those of you who don't know, I'm a senior executive officer here at Metro. I've been here about 7 years. I wasn't in my, from career perspective, I was in Massachusetts for a while, spent some time, I worked for the Massachusetts Port Authority, and I had all the engineering and construction for the air side at Logan International Airport and a couple other general aviation airports. Boston is a beautiful city. It was a very, very interesting place to live after having lived in California, you know, for virtually my whole life. I think the first year I was there, it was like 100 inches of snow. Wow. And I find myself at 5 o'clock in the morning out shoveling snow, you know, off the car because I parked it on the curb. And about the time I got the car all shoveled out, the snowplows come by. There it goes back again, right? Covers the car up again.
You put your chair so no one took your spot, right?
Yeah, I did. I got smart and got a carport after that.
I'm from Boston.
Oh, are you?
I'm from Springfield originally.
Are you? Great city. Great city.
Wellesley.
Oh, Wellesley. All right. All right. Yeah, we lived in Wellesley.
I've got a house kid, and all of my babysitters came from Wellesley College.
And we're missing the Patriots game just to listen to you.
If you're wondering,
Is it
it's
even a game?
14. My watch notifies me when it happens.
Yeah, I'm actually honored because if you live in Boston and you are not a sports fan, a Boston sports fan, you know, the Red Sox, the Patriots, they will just simply kill you.
That's right.
So, yeah. We became
Red Sox in the playoffs this year.
Don't know. My kids are Boston sports fans, so Celtics and Red Sox. So anyway, yeah, it's a great city, and it was a great experience working for Massport. Spent some time on the private side after that, and was a vice president for a couple of engineering firms that are international engineering firms, large engineering firms. And then about 7 years ago, came over to Metro. And so I've been here for 7 years and worked on the Expo and the Foothill projects. And then somehow they were looking for a lucky individual to take over all the Measure M rail transit projects. And so that lucky individual is me. I am truly lucky to do that. It's an amazing program. And so I have responsibility for all of the Measure M rail transit projects, many of which, I'll talk about them tonight, but many of which are in the environmental process, transitioning into engineering, and then we'll move on into construction. So, I've given this presentation a couple times, so if you've heard it before, my apologies, the jokes are the same. My mother wrote my introduction. Bart didn't read it, thank goodness. Just kidding. My mother didn't write it.
We only have one repeat person besides me, Brian, so you can actually get into the weeds on this.
All right. Well, this is a fairly high-level presentation. It's not. This does not get into the weeds. It's more the elevator version of what's going on with these projects. To get into the weeds would be more like a 4-hour discussion. So I'm staying pretty high level on this stuff. If you've got questions, I'm certainly here to answer them for you if you've got some questions about specific projects. Okay, so let's just dive into this. So 2028, the Olympics. There's been a lot of discussion about finishing all these projects by 2028, and the question is, can we do that? Can we do that? And so I'll try to go through that here and help you to understand, and the more I talk about it, it helps me to understand where we're going with this and how we're going to accomplish this. So we've got 13 rail projects that are in line for the 2028
Olympics. And a number of them are already under construction. Those we're going to get done. There is no question we're going to get those done by 2028. So this is these are the projects that are under construction right now. I put the Foothill extension to Pomona on there as well because we've just signed the contract last week for this project, so we will be under construction here. Already under construction, really, we've done some utility work and so forth. So a great project, looking forward to it. And then we've got some projects that are near term that will be under construction very soon. And so the airport connector and Purple Line 3, East San Fernando Valley, I stuck that one in there too because we're in preliminary engineering now on that project. And if we do, the goal is to get a shovel in the ground by sometime in 2022. So a couple, Bart mentioned that, a couple of years. The reality is, if we do not have construction going on these projects by 2023, then we ain't gonna make 2028. You know, it's gonna take 4 or 5 years to get these projects done. And get them to a point where they're in revenue service. So that's the goal. And then we've got right now what we're calling the 4 pillar projects. And these are projects that the Metro Board of Directors is very interested in proceeding with. And they're looking to us, staff, to tell them, okay, how are you going to get these done by 2028? That's West Santa Ana Branch, East Side, Sepulveda, and Green Line Extension. These are the pillar projects, and you'll hear more about these if you haven't already. So there are some challenges with these projects. Funding is certainly a challenge in building these pillar projects. We've got the Measure M funds that come to us at 800 million and some change a year. And so we are, and many of these projects, the pillar projects, were moving. They were developed in our long-range transportation plan to be completed in 2040 or 2045 and outer years. And so the challenge is, if you've got, let's say, $4 billion allocated to these projects in 2040, and you move that up, then now you only got $2 billion to build these projects, right? In real dollars, today's dollars. So funding is an issue. So how do you deal with it? Well, we've got a unified cost management policy at Metro. We've got some very specific waterfall items that we go through in these projects to look at, okay, well, how can we save costs? How can we reduce costs for these projects? Scope reduction, value engineering, and then other cost savings. Scope reduction primarily is looking at many things, but what we did at Foothill when we had a major cost issue was we reduced the alignment, the length of the alignment, and that is just for the initial phase of the project. So in other words, we're phasing projects to utilize funds that we have now, building like what we're calling an IOS, or an initial operating segment. And that reduces the amount of project that we build now, and then we phase the other portion of the project later. And then state and federal grants and alternative delivery methods. And I'll talk about our P3 program a little bit as well. So we're looking at all kinds of ways to get at the ability to fund these projects with the long-range transportation dollars that were meant for, to fund these projects out in 2040 or 2045. So P3 under consideration. So one of the methods that we're looking at to help procure these projects and to get them built is to engage the private community. And the projects that we're looking at for public-private partnerships right now, this is our public-private partnership program, is the West Santa Ana Branch, the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor, and Sepulveda. So and I say we are considering these projects because we are going through some analysis right now. We're not, I cannot stand here and tell you now, these are going to be P3 projects. We're going through some analysis to look at these as P3. P3, I believe P3 is a win-win. I think P3 is an excellent way to deliver a project. For these reasons, it's long-term. The capital is provided by or a portion of the capital is provided by the private industry, which gives them equity in the project, which in turn builds in the desire for the private community to build these projects to perform. The projects have got to perform in order for the private community to receive their availability payments. It builds in quality, and it certainly builds in innovation. And for me, as an owner, on the owner's side, that is a win-win, because the private side takes on the responsibility to build in the quality, to build in the ability to move people from point A to point B on time and consistently. If they don't, then they don't get the availability payment. And that is a significant incentive. And so then the question becomes, and innovation. I want to talk about innovation a little bit. I believe, and Metro believes, that the private community has the capability to innovate well beyond what we as an owner can produce. And the incentive is to build these projects at the least cost possible with the retention of the quality. And I've taken a couple trips. I went to Canada and visited the Canada line. I ran into Brian in the airport up there. It was like, whoa, we're 2,000 miles away. So that was quite coincidental. But went to Canada and rode the Canada line and heard about the innovation that the P3 built into that project there, and saved all kinds of money, and they are performing. They have not missed an availability payment. One of the things they did was the authority had all these plans to build to tunnel underneath the city of Vancouver. They gave them to the P3 consultant, and the P3 consultant said, "Oh, that's nice." Threw them out. Didn't even look at them. And they decided to do a cut and cover right through downtown Vancouver. Saved them all kinds of money. And they made it happen. And the city was a partner to that. And the city made it happen. The government agencies that were involved in that made that happen because they could see the value in that. That's what we're looking forward to, that kind of innovation. They reduced the size of the stations because they said, look, all we got to do is we got to move this many people from here to here on this headway. And so what they did was they increased the amount of trains going through there, and they reduced the size of the station, saved themselves all kinds of money in station construction. And they put those trains in there on time and moved those 8,500 people an hour through there, however many people that they needed to move out of there. And that's innovative, and that's what we're looking for. So we think it's a win-win. Now, so there's a catch, right? It's always a catch. There's the catch. Risk. It's the risk. How do I as an owner transfer the risk, all the risks that are involved in these projects, to the private side without having to pay for that? Well, the answer is you can't. You can't. Contractors are willing to take on that risk. And I should be cautious about saying that because there's some movement in the industry right now that contractors are looking at the risk and they're saying, wait a minute, You know, on this project that we just did, we took on too much risk and we didn't get paid enough for that. So there's some cost versus risk transfer movement in the industry right now that may influence our ability to do P3 projects or our approach to the P3 projects. But that said, the key is to find a good balance between risk and transfer and the cost for that risk transfer. So, you know, we're not quite sure where that's gonna fall out right now. VFM, value for money analysis, is what we're doing to evaluate that. We're looking at what kinds of risk we're trying to transfer, and we've got spreadsheets of risk right now on these three projects. We've gone through an extensive risk analysis, and we've got spreadsheets of risk. And what we are doing right now is we're looking at, okay, where does that risk go? Is it ours or is it the private side? And then if it's the private side, what's it going to cost us? So that's where the value of money for analysis, or the value for money analysis is right now. And we're doing that value for money analysis on these three projects. And so depending on how that comes out, that's where the decision is going to be made as to whether we're going to do a P3 for these projects or not. A lot of interest on the private side, a lot of interest on our side. We've just got to figure out a way to make it beneficial for both sides to get that risk transfer at a reasonable cost. So this is the program right now. That's the rail trend. This is the projects that are under my responsibility right now. Airport Connector is actually Tim Lindholm is now doing that project. I had too much on my plate, so I figured out a way to offload that one onto Tim. But Tim's great, and Tim is somebody who's very capable, a very good guy to work with, and very fair, but very knowledgeable as well. And so that's a nice project. Division 20 portal, we just let out a contract on that. We've had some issues with the bid, but I think we're through those issues now. And so we're moving on with that project. So that should get started very quickly. And then the rest of them, East San Fernando, Gold Line, West Santa Ana, Green Line, and the last two, East Side and Sepulveda. I'll talk about those in a little bit of depth here. So that is the program. You'll notice the 28 by 28 line, the pink line, is when these projects need to be complete. And you'll also notice that not all of them are there. Not all of them are going to get done by that time. And now I need to go to my board. My board is asking me or us, okay, that's what the schedule shows now. How are you going to get this done for us? How are you going to get it done for us, Meade? So, well, I mean, if you look at this schedule, there are some opportunities here. There are some opportunities here. Because the color coding, the red is engineering, black is just procurement, green is environmental, and the blue is construction. And so if I move the engineering here in parallel with the environmental, and here in parallel with the environmental, I can gain all kinds of time. I can gain time. So there's opportunities there. Some of the issues with that is that that's costly, because if you're doing your engineering during the environmental process, you don't have a lot of base to base your engineering on. So that's something that we'll have to contend with. But that is one of the only ways that we're going to get all this done. And we've got some other ideas as well, but at least that's one mechanism to get some of these projects done. The other one is the iOS idea, to segment or phase the projects. Do less project now in the first phase, and more project later in the second and third phases. Okay, so West Santa Ana branch, you probably know pretty much the statistics on these projects by now. They're massive, some of them at least are massive light rail projects, very interesting projects, lots of the technical, financial, and political challenges with them. And we're ready for all of that. We're up for it. We've got the teams put in place to go after it. 12 new stations. So notice this Measure M's got $4 billion in it. That's 2043. So if you move that up, we don't have $4 billion in cash for this project. And the new cost estimates are showing 6.5 to probably up to $7 billion to do this project. And we're still working on some of the more detailed design, so we're going to get some new cost estimates in here in the next couple of months. But so now costs are going up, but the funding, we're going to have to figure out how to approach the funding. We've got a plan to do that. So, you know, the private industry that's out here in the audience that's saying, well, hey, if you can't fund it, then why are we wasting our time looking at it? We have a good funding plan to do this, and you know that's gonna play out with our board over the next couple of months. So you'll be hearing more about that. I think I missed a slide there. Yeah, talk about the iOS. Oh. Interesting piece of this project, and one of our challenges is we've got 10 miles of this project that's in the same corridor as Union Pacific Railroad. And so we're going to have to negotiate with Union Pacific in order to get the project built in a shared corridor with Union Pacific. We're in negotiations right now, and Union Pacific's tough. They're a business, and they are, you know, any decisions they make have to be squared with their corporate office in Omaha. So they ain't giving anything away. And so that goes to the funding issue.
And they hate commuter rail.
Yeah, they're working with us. They're working with us. But the bottom line is that if we're going to have to, if we're going to be located on the same property or on their property, they got customers. They got customers out there. They want to make sure their customers are served. They got safety issues. They deal with the FRA. You know, they don't want a light rail line running, you know, any closer than what they're telling us now is about 20 feet. Which means that if we can't reach that, then we're going to have to buy real estate, and then the costs go up, and then the funding situation gets more complicated. So we're talking to Union Pacific right now. They're actually being pretty good partners right now, but it's a process. It's a long process, and that goes to the schedule, to getting this thing done on schedule. So we've got to have agreements with Union Pacific done here pretty quickly in the next, you know, for that kind of an agreement, probably in the next year and a half or so. So that advanced utility relocation throughout the whole 20-mile corridor, we're working on that. We're going to push that pretty far along in the design. I don't think we're going to take that to the private side. That utility relocation is something that Metro will likely hold on to, as well as the geotechnical work. We are using an in-house contract to do the bench contract to do the geotechnical work. Some of the utility work is being done by our environmental consultant, so there may be some work there. But we're going to take those designs along pretty far, maybe even 100%. East Side Transit Corridor. This project we need a decision from the Metro Board. Which alignment are we going to pursue? That's all I want. Just need the decision, and then I'll go build it. So we've got some work to do internally. Metro environmental folks have got to put together a recommendation, which it's quite involved, for this project. There are political components on both sides. You folks want either the Highway 60 or the Washington Street alignment, so they'll have to cut through all of that and decide which alignment. And again, if I don't got a shovel in the ground by 2023, then we're not going to make 2028 on this project. And we're advising our board of that, and they're aware of that. And our board is being pretty good about, trying to do everything they can to make these projects go. So, looking forward to it. Green Line extension. So I say, this is about 4 miles of project that provides really good connection to the South Bay, to Torrance and up to the airport, and to the new Rams Chargers Stadium. And so I'm saying that this project is very likely we're going to be able to get this done by 2028. What you're seeing here is the schedule that's in the long-range transportation plan. And so I'm going to move, if I'm going to get it done by 2028, I'm going to have to move some things around, put the engineering into the environmental piece in parallel, and do some things like that. But I think I can get it done by 2028 if I'm able to do that. Some more statistics on the Green Line. It's a rendering of the Green Line. I think it's a pretty nice one, actually. It's the extension is the dark green that goes from Redondo on down to the Torrance Transit Center. About 900 million, 4.6 miles. So if I can get the construction going, then I can get this done. East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor. Very complex project. Very complex project. It takes a light rail line right up the middle of Van Nuys Boulevard, and all of the challenges that go along with that. So right now, we're currently these are some renderings of the cross sections that we're trying to deal with. The thing to take away from this is we've got 110 feet of right of way, and we got 118 feet of need. So that doesn't quite gel. So we're working hard with the city of LA, who typically are let's say not really quick about making decisions about reducing their right of way. And we're working on traffic lane configurations. We're working on left turns. There's gates that have to go in the left turns now, and sidewalk width. Their master plan requires 15-foot sidewalks. 15-foot sidewalk is not going to work here. So we're working hard, and a bike path too. So we can't fit all that stuff in this cross section. So we're working with the city of LA, and they have been very good about coming to the table with us and working with us to try to figure out, okay, how do we benefit, this program that the public is very positive about this light rail line, so they want it. So the city of LA is working hard to get us there too, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to take for both of us both of our agencies to make that happen. Sepulveda, PDA. So there's been some interest in PDA and what that means to Metro. So this is some of the timeline that we're looking at. I'm not going to go through every item. If you've got questions about it, then let me know. But the real question, I think, is what does a PDA mean to Metro, and how are we going to approach PDA, a project development agreement? So to us, to get the contractor or the developer involved early and in parallel with the environmental process is going to be extremely beneficial. It's going to be extremely beneficial. And there's some logistics that are going to be challenging in order for us to make that happen. We're looking at hiring 2 PDA contractors. So, and those 2 PDA contractors may or will likely be developing 2 very different modes, transportation modes. And so we've got to have, from our perspective, program management, we've got to have managers specifically focused on each one of those PDA concession plans. That's got to filter back up over into the environmental process, which is also going on in parallel. And so it's something that Metro is very typically very prescriptive about how they do their environmental process. In this case, we don't want to be prescriptive. We want the PDA consultant or contractor to help us develop this project and to apply the innovation that I was talking about. And to be able to do this in a cost-effective way. And so we're developing an organization that can handle keeping these 2 PDA concepts very separate, firewall in between, fielding that into the environmental process, the environmental consultant, taking it, commenting, working with the PDA consultant back into each side of the PDA for each concept. And then at some point, we'll have to make a decision. At some point not too far down the road, because we don't want to keep putting effort and time into two separate alignments. At some point, we're going to have to say, look, this alignment works, this alignment doesn't. Thank you very much. We have a good, I think, a very fair payment scheme for the off-ramp PDA. And then the other PDA has an opportunity to submit a fixed price bid for a P3. So we're gonna negotiate with that PDA or that PDA concessionaire to pursue a P3 contract. But if that doesn't work, then we're prepared to procure this PDA, this P3 under a competitive bid as well. That RFP for the PDA will be out this month. We're shooting for this month. And we're reviewing, right now we're reviewing the draft of that. So it's we've been working very hard on it. We've got teams of people working on it for quite some time now. And so we expect it to be out, if not this month, then very soon into the next month. And I know there's a lot of interest in that. So that's the presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Softballs, is this okay?
You're the hardest questions you can find.
Yes, sir.
You talked about Union Pacific not wanting your electric operation within 20 feet. But what happens right down the blue line here? How close is Union Pacific?
They're very close. They're closer than 20 feet. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's their policy and that they're willing to do that again. So, and in fact, they are not at this point. We are negotiating with them. I feel very positive that they will be at least talk to us about something less than 20 feet. But that's also going to be expensive for us. They're not going to do that for free. And they've got safety issues that they're concerned with. So there may be crash walls that they're looking for, which reduces it even more than 20 feet. They're going to want intrusion protection, all kinds of things that along a 10-mile corridor. That it's not unreasonable what their concerns. And so what we need to do is get on board with that and figure out a way to alleviate those concerns. Yes?
So one alternative to the PPA would be for your agency to sell 20-year bonds to finance upfront and then pay it back later. I think there's a couple advantages to that. First of all, the interest on those bonds, which are probably be tax exempt, is probably less than the inflation that you would experience by the later bill date. You'd save money, I think. And also you'd reduce your cost of risk to the commercial agency. So I can see two or three advantages to thinking of selling bonds. I don't know if you have the authority.
We are headlong into looking at all of those options, yes. One point there, if we have the P3, the P3 concessionaire, or the P3 consortium finance some of the project, that is more expensive money than we can get by selling bonds. It's significantly more expensive. If you borrow money through bonds or other means, then there is a debt service on that, so we have to factor that into what the cost of the project is. But the benefit of having the PDA or the P3 consultant finance some of the project, and we have to look at how much of the project that would be beneficial for us for them to finance, is that they have equity in the project, and that means that consortium, if they got their money in it, they're going to have a responsibility to build that thing on time and on budget, because their finance guys, as part of the consortium, they got a financer that's going into that project saying, okay, we'll apply $1 billion into this. They're going to be very interested in how well that project goes.
Well, let's say you took one project to experiment with, and that was going to be built in the 2030s, 2040s, and you sold 20-year bonds, and you did the construction over the next 10 years, and then the following 10 years, you use the Measure M money to pay off those bonds. And let's say you could get a 3% rate. Inflation's going to be more than 3% when you get out to the period between 2020 and 2030. So you'd be saving money, you'd be pulling that money in for the earlier construction. It seems to me to be less risky than trying to count on a private partnership which might not materialize.
Yeah, all of that. I mean, we're looking at all of that. We're looking at the cost of money. We're looking at how to finance it. Some of the rules in the Measure M ordinance are that you can pay for capital costs, but you cannot pay for O&M costs on some aspects of the funds that you gain through borrowing. So, there's some nuances there that we're trying to work through. But again, for us, the potential for the consortium to be financing a part of the project is also a benefit to us, because they're bought into the project and they oversee the project in a way that they would not if we were paying for everything.
You have to cover their what they evaluate as risk. You've got to cover that.
Yes.
Which might be more than the 3% interest that you'd pay on selling bonds.
Yes, that's right. That's right. We're looking at value for money analysis. Yes.
I have a question about those P3 consortiums, the process of how you get in a relationship with them. Do they come approach you, or do you know who they are? Excuse me, know who they are already and talk, send out kind of an RFP?
That's a good question.
And the reason I'm asking is down in Orange County, us transit advocates in Orange County want a few light rail projects to happen someday, like extension of your West Santa Ana branch to Santa Ana, Harbor Boulevard, Beach Boulevard, that sort of thing. And there just isn't political support at the OCTA board level for those kind of projects yet. And hypothetically, I'm just thinking out loud, this is a personal opinion too, maybe they would get interested if one of these consortiums just shows up and says, hey, we would love to go to your county and do these projects.
Okay, so there's an answer to that question on many levels, but the political will to pursue these projects is extremely important. And our leadership here at Metro, Bill Washington, is 100% on board with this. And he has visionary ideas about how these things can be done, and we get all kinds of support because of that. And that infiltrates into our board because it's not an idea that we avoid. It's an idea that we talk about and that we pursue, and that it generates momentum. And so the political will is extremely important there. Top down, top down. I wouldn't be doing any of this if Phil Washington wasn't on board with it. That'd be a non-starter. And so it starts there. The other thing is that the other part of that question is that how do we engage the private community? And we do a lot of work on the Metro side to do market soundings. We make phone calls. We invite people, major and small business contractors, and potential P3 builders to come in and talk to us. And that works two ways. It gives us information about what they're looking for, and it gives them information about what we're planning to do. And so we do a lot of outreach to the private community. I'm going to be in Toronto in November, speaking to a group of, it's a P3 conference, speaking to a group of international P3 consortium partners. And that's part of our outreach. And then again in March, we're going to do the same thing here at Metro. We just wanted to get a little bit further along in our process so we know more about what we're doing before we bring people in from all over the world to talk to us about P3. Yes, sir.
Yeah, on the same topic for the P3 at Sepulveda Pass, right? You mentioned you're going to select 2 PDA contractors.
Yes.
Then, if I recall in the last public meeting about that, there was like 4 different design concepts thrown out there. I think HDR did it.
Yeah.
Okay, right? And so are you going to be looking at 2 PDAs to adopt any or some of those ideas and vet them through? Or are you going to pick one that does a surface, option, and another one that does buried, underground?
That's a good question. So we did a feasibility study that has all kinds of different options about how to get from, the valley over to the west side. And so these are the concepts. These are sort of basic guidelines that we're looking at to get from point A to point B. What we're going to be looking for is the PDA consortiums, the 2 components, to look at what's the best alignment under their idea about how to get there. And we'll evaluate the potential for those 2 as we move along in the process. And so I think the feasibility study provides all kinds of great information about ridership, where the people are, connections to the Purple Line, to UCLA, to as the lines move down. But what we're looking for is the PDA consultant to tell us, what is the most beneficial alignment, what is the most beneficial cost-effective way to produce, the kind of transit line that we're looking for. And we'll choose 2 PDA consultants based on that, and then as we move along in the process, after we have the PDA going, we're gonna keep evaluating those two paths, and say a year and a half down the road, when we're getting ready to develop an LPA, we're gonna make a decision. We're gonna ask the PDA consultants to come in and, give us an evaluation of their process. And then we'll look at it and say, okay, this is the most beneficial to us. Thank you very much. One PDA, the other one will say, let's continue on with your particular idea about how this thing needs to go. Whether it's a traditional tunneling, or whether it's some kind of a rubber tire concept, whether it's a monorail. We have no preconception of how that should go right now.
What is an LPA? Now we know what the PDA is. You said you're gonna
Locally
back down
preferred
from an
alternative. Locally preferred alternative, which
Okay.
is
Okay,
the alignment that we're telling our board, this is the alignment we're going to pursue.
got it.
Yes, sir.
You had a good conversation about assessing the risk and transferring to P3 or any of these alternative methods that you have.
Yeah.
Where is, or,
Put that back up.
sure,
It'll help. I like my risk slide.
yeah, that was.
I like that red airplane going on.
Yeah. I like it.
Is that
How-
risky?
I like it how it's simple, it's only 3 words. So I think,
Leadership is dangerous.
so I really like how you mentioned transferring and cost of transferring, but what is overall idea about these all alternative delivery methods? Is the risk gonna stay with the P3 group and the contractor, or at some point they may find a way to transfer it back? Or maybe Metro.
We're
at
going
some
to,
point there.
we're going
What is the
to.
guarantee that doesn't
Yeah,
happen?
I mean, that's a good question. We're going to write a contract, and we're going to work with the PDA consultant. Ultimately, we're gonna shortlist PDA consultants. We'll work with those shortlisted firms to help us to write our contract, and then we're gonna choose one, or we'll choose 2. And we'll work with those consultants to help us write our contract. And then, actually, during the bidding process, we'll have to get a contract written. But the idea is that once we have a contract, and once we sign a contract, that contract will define the conditions under which we proceed, and what kinds of risks that contractor is going to take. Now, we've got a PDA, a project development agreement portion of this, and that's one thing. And that's not necessarily the same contract that we will have as for the P3. Once you get to the P3 portion of it, now you're talking about assigning risk for the capital portion, right? The geotechnical stuff, trying to negotiate with the city, the schedule, taking all those risks, will define what risks are ours and what risks are the consortium's, and that'll be in the contract, and so we'll all be obligated to that through the course of the contract, which is probably going to be about 30 years. So it'll be the capital portion and the operation and maintenance portion. And all those risks will be assigned. Now, whose responsibility is the geotechnical? That's the owners. A portion of it's the owners, and we'll have that all well defined. We have legal consultants right now that are helping us write that contract. And our plan is to speak with the consortium to help us develop that contract before we actually sign it. And so we want to make sure that it's fair and equitable for both sides.
And the implementing guarantee is a bond, or how do we secure that the P3 contractor will actually stay with their limitations?
Well, I think what we want to do is be diligent about the consortium that we're hiring. So we'll go through a selection process that evaluates the capability of that firm to complete the project. So we won't hire a firm if in our estimate they can't follow the project through. And that'll be all part of the selection process. There'll be some financial analysis, there'll be technical analysis, you know, and we'll evaluate it pretty thoroughly. Any other questions? Boy, I wore you out.
What sort of level of concept development do you see on the Sepulveda Pass project? You know, you're speaking of sort of the two parallel concepts going on. So what type of I guess, level of development do you see those concepts reaching before sort of the point where you'd say, you know, this one we want to stick with that one as well?
Well, you know, there's some theories out there in the industry about that, right? We on West Santa Ana branch, we're looking at going to about 15% design in-house. And then we're gonna let the P3 consortium run with the rest of it. And develop as much design as they feel like they can develop and manage their own risk. So they may take some portions of it to 100%. They may take some portions of it to 5%, depending on how risky the systems piece, for instance. How much of the systems design do they want to accomplish before they give us a bid, a hard dollar bid? And so we're letting the consortium decide that. On the PDA Sepulveda, I don't think we've decided that yet. How much of the design? But we don't really feel like Metro is in a good position to tell. That's why we're doing a PDA. We want the PDA consultant to tell us, how much of the concept, the conceptual design, or the PE that is appropriate to do for their particular system. And
So you don't see HDR going beyond a certain level before the consortium's HNTV, is it?
Yeah.
Well, HNTV is doing the feasibility study right now.
Okay.
We have not hired a consultant for the environmental process on the Sepulveda yet.
But on the design side, right, how far will HNTV take the design?
Right now, I don't know, maybe 5%. The study is like 5% max. So we're looking at the PDA consultant to help us with that aspect of it. We want the PDA consultant to take that design into a level that they're comfortable moving into a P3 contract with.
And then I think the question was, how far did the consortium, the two PDAs, take their design before you next down to one?
How far?
How far do you think you need?
Hard to say. Let me answer that this way. Out in the industry right now, there's some ideas out there that if you take on a project with less than, let's say, 30% design, and what's 30%? That's very nebulous. What is 30%? But let's sort of use 30% as a milestone. There's some ideas out there in the industry right now that it's too risky to take on anything, to sign a contract that's got anything less than a 30% design or thereabouts, because you just don't know enough about the project. As a private firm that's investing time and money into pursuing a project. This project, the Sepulveda Pass project, it's going to be extremely expensive for a PDA consultant to develop a design that's, let's say, 30%. Extremely expensive. You could spend multi-millions of dollars doing that. And so what we're doing is we're developing a payment scheme that we think is a good one, that is fair, that will pay these firms to pursue the design, And then when we get to the point a year or so down the road, we get to a 30% or 15 or 20%, whatever it is, and we're ready to say we're going with one and let the other one go, we have a payment scheme to pay the one that we let go for the time that they spent working on that. And we think it's fair. We know it's not going to be 100%, what they would make in a competitive bid job, but it's, we believe, incentive enough to have firms pursue it. And the incentive of perhaps getting the P3 contract is a big incentive too.
So that's not, there's no specific criteria yet in your mind for what that point is. It's kind of, the design starts, you go along, and then at some point, that decision point will become clear as it all progresses.
We're thinking, let me say personally, I'm thinking 30% range.
Yeah.
Personally, just because of the risk involved. But I don't think that, I may be wrong, I don't think that the guys writing the RFP, they're not gonna say, we want 30% design.
Yeah.
They won't say that.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, yes.
Another question on the PPA.
Yeah.
Let's say we take your list of 28 and extend it in the next 10 after that. So let's say the next 38 projects. And I know that at least one is not on the 2028 by the, for example, the Green Line extension to Norwalk. So you've got another 10 or so probably.
Yeah, we have projects on the long range transportation fund that are not on the.
Let's take that list of, say, the next 38.
Okay.
Now you could divide that list into two classes. One which is amenable to PPA and one that's not amenable to PPA. Some of them just won't work for PPA.
So you're talking about P3?
P3.
PPA, yeah, okay.
Okay. So then, if you were to concentrate your idea of bonds, selling bonds for those, particularly in the beyond the 28, that you could possibly pull into the 28, finish by 2028, if you could sell bonds and concentrate those on ones that you know are not going to be amenable to the P3.
It's a cash, you're talking about a cash flow issue, right? You're talking about cash flow. How much cash do you have to build the 38 projects?
Yeah, but you'd be
based
using
on what
the
you spend
cash income from the sales tax, major M sales tax, that you would collect between 2028 and 2038 by selling, let's say selling 20-year bonds or 25-year bonds at 3%. And pulling and obligating that far out sales tax income to spend now, and picking one that's not amenable to
exactly.
the P3 and is beyond the 28. So you could say, by doing that, you could make a 29th, such as Green Line to Norwalk.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is that if we leverage borrowed money now, it gives us the cash flow to spend now on these projects,
Yes.
and it frees up money to spend on other projects that we need
Yes,
later.
and not only that,
Yeah.
but if you wait, if you could start something now, and compare the alternative of waiting till 2029 to start it, between 2029 and 2035, try and estimate the inflation that you encounter, and you're locking in that 3% bonds now.
We're looking at
the experience of the gold line, just between the time you did your preliminary analysis and the time you got bids back, you had a big jump. So that's a risk, and you could mitigate that risk by selling bonds at, like 20-year bonds at 3%, and obligating that money, that far out money, the far out years. I mean, this Project M it doesn't have a sunset, right? So you could do this for the next 100 years. You could obligate for the next 100 years. If you could sell, if anybody would buy 100-year bonds.
Yeah. Well, so there's some issues with that, and we're well aware of this use of borrowed money now for a cash flow benefit later. You know, there is some issues with that, and one of those issues is if we spend money now, if we leverage money now, what projects are we impacting later? What projects will we not have money for later?
Well, you
In
can
our-
do whatever.
Our financial folks, they've got issues with getting into debt. And with dollars at these kinds of magnitudes, you can get into a lot of debt real quick. And so you can add, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars to your debt and your debt service. And so, you know, some of the questions are,
But if you can do it cheaper by a known interest rate against an unknown inflation, which is going to be more than the interest rate,
well, how do we know that?
well, you might have a depression, I don't know.
Might have a recession. So, you know, there's all kinds of things that come into play there. You know, we don't necessarily know what the financial outlook's gonna look like over the next 10 years, or the next 20 years, for sure. And, you know, the use of cash now to free up money, and using inflation, I mean, you know, you've got, if you use the inflation capacity in the ordinance, then you've actually got more money in 2043 than what you're showing now, right? I mean, because inflation at 4% a year is gonna inflate a, you
Yeah,
know,
you have an
200
increase
million
in
now into $1
population.
billion later.
Increase in population, more people spending more money.
Yeah,
The
you got a bigger tax base. Yes. Believe me, our financial folks got all that, they're looking at all of that. And so we're trying to develop a
So do you have a publishable analysis of that?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment. We have to take all that to our board of directors and vet that with them before we can go to the public with it. The board of directors has to be able to see what the options are and understand the nuances, understand some of the risks, and then make a decision. Yes, let's move forward with this. Then we can bring it to the public. So apologies, I can't get too specific tonight about, you know, how we're planning to do stuff.
Well, what I was getting at is, could you pick one project, such as a Green Line extension, as a pathfinder for,
Four projects. 4 pillar projects.
I'm talking about the project that would be beyond the 28 you thought.
Yeah, so you can't prioritize one project over another. That project may be in one supervisor's district. Other project that you're not picking may be in another supervisor's district, which has a whole different constituency. All these people voted for Measure M. And so if you prioritize one project over another, it gets us into trouble.
Well, I was just talking about a pathfinder to explore it with, pick one project to explore in detail.
Yeah, I don't think I can tell you any more about how we're pursuing that.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. All right? Is that good? Hey, nobody's asleep?
And the 8:15 train will be leaving, and he'll be able to walk slowly.
Oh, plenty of time.
Anybody on the 8:15 train, you can